I walked down the aisle, and every single chair was empty. No whispers. No smiles. Not even pity. Just silence, the kind that suffocates you slowly, second by second. But what no one knew in that moment was that this silence wasn't defeat. It was my setup. And 10 seconds would be enough to destroy everything my family thought they controlled. If you've ever been underestimated, judged, or abandoned when you needed people the most, subscribe now. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? Because this story will stay with you. I never needed applause to feel accomplished. While my family measured success in titles, salaries, and the names you could casually drop at dinner, I built my life in silence. At 28, I worked in academic publishing, shaping ideas that would outlive the people who wrote them. It wasn't glamorous, but it was meaningful. And to me, that mattered more than status ever could. I believed in substance over image. In people over appearances. In character over credentials. That's probably why I fell in love with Marcus. He wasn't loud. He didn't try to impress anyone. He just showed up, consistently, calmly, without games. The kind of man who listens more than he speaks. The kind of man my family would never understand. And I knew that, long before I ever introduced him to them. What I didn't know was just how far they would go to prove me wrong. My family didn't just have standards, they had a blueprint. My mother curated people the way she curated her dinner parties, carefully selected, aesthetically pleasing, socially advantageous. My father didn't speak much, but when he did, it carried the quiet authority of someone who believed success gave him the right to judge. In their world, you didn't just fall in love. You aligned. And I stopped aligning the moment I chose Marcus. The first time I mentioned him, my mother didn't ask if I was happy. She asked what he did. Not who he was, what he did. When I told her he worked in security, there was a pause. A subtle one. But I felt it stretch, heavy and sharp. My brother didn't even try to hide it. A smirk. A glance exchanged across the table. They hadn't met him yet. But somehow, they had already decided who he was. And I could feel it, something had shifted. Not loudly. But permanently. It didn't start with insults. That would have been easier to confront. It started with questions that sounded harmless, until you listened closely. Security where? My mother asked one afternoon, her tone wrapped in politeness so precise it felt rehearsed. Is it temporary? My brother added, pretending curiosity while already knowing the answer he wanted. I answered calmly. I always did. I talked about Marcus the way I saw him, disciplined, observant, steady under pressure. But every quality I described seemed to lose value the moment it passed through their filter. A week later, I noticed something small. A post my mother liked online, an article about high-value partnerships and the importance of intellectual compatibility in long-term relationships. She never mentioned me. She didn't have to. At dinner, the shift became clearer. Conversations would stop for half a second when I entered. Not obvious. Not direct. Just enough to let me know. I was already being discussed when I wasn't there. And somehow, I had become the disappointing decision no one wanted to name out loud. They finally met him on a Sunday night that felt staged from the start. My mother chose the restaurant. Of course she did. Somewhere expensive enough to remind Marcus where he stood before he even sat down. The lighting was soft, the kind meant to flatter, but nothing about that night was kind. Marcus arrived calm, respectful, exactly as I knew he would. He greeted everyone with quiet confidence, no hesitation, no insecurity. For a moment, I thought maybe, just maybe, they would see what I saw. They didn't. My mother smiled too much. Asked questions that sounded polite but landed like tests. So, do you see yourself growing beyond security work? She said, tilting her head slightly. My brother chuckled under his breath when Marcus answered without defensiveness. And then came the silence. Not awkward, intentional. They weren't trying to know him. They were measuring him. And when dinner ended, I realized something cold and undeniable. They hadn't just rejected him. They had decided I was beneath them for choosing him. I still sent them the invitation. Clean, minimal, exactly the kind my mother would have approved of if it were anyone else's wedding. I addressed each envelope by hand, even knowing what might come back. A part of me still believed that paper could carry something my words hadn't: sincerity. The responses didn't come as RSVPs. They came as silence. Then, 3 days later, an email, forwarded to me by a colleague who didn't know it was my family behind it. Subject line: a concern regarding an upcoming event. It was written by my mother. Polite. Controlled. Devastating. She didn't name me. She didn't need to. She described the wedding as a regrettable mismatch, warned that attending would signal endorsement of a deeply incompatible union, and suggested that those who valued reputation might reconsider showing up. 68 guests had been invited. One by one, confirmations disappeared. That's when it hit me. They weren't just refusing to come. They were making sure no one else did either. The calls stopped before I even realized I'd stopped answering them. At first, I drafted replies. Careful, composed, rational. I wanted to explain, to defend him, to defend us. But every version sounded like I was asking for permission. And that was the moment something inside me shifted. I deleted them all. My mother sent one last message: there's still time to fix this. Not understand. Not support. Fix. As if Marcus was a mistake I could undo. That night, I sat on the floor of my apartment, surrounded by unopened envelopes and unanswered questions. I let myself feel it fully: the humiliation, the anger, the grief of realizing that love, to them, had conditions I would never meet. Marcus didn't push. He didn't ask me to fight them. He just stayed, steady as always, his presence grounding me in a way words couldn't. I'm not weak, I whispered, more to myself than to him. I'm waiting. And in that silence, I made a decision they would never see coming. I didn't fight back. That was the first move. No angry messages. No public defense. No attempts to clarify misunderstandings. I let their version of the story exist, untouched, unchallenged. To them, it probably looked like I had accepted defeat. My mother stopped trying after that. My brother went quiet. The silence, for them, meant victory. But silence is where I think best. I started revisiting everything. The email. The wording. The tone. It wasn't emotional, it was calculated. Designed to influence, not just express. That meant something important: my mother didn't just disapprove. She orchestrated. And if she orchestrated, there would be traces. Patterns. People who received that message. People who reacted to it. I didn't confront anyone. I observed. Who canceled first? Who hesitated? Who avoided eye contact when my name came up? I wasn't looking for sympathy anymore. I was mapping behavior. Because if they wanted control, I needed to understand exactly how they were using it. By the time the wedding week arrived, my family acted like the outcome was already written. My mother stopped pretending. No more subtle remarks, no more polite framing. She spoke about my mistake as if it were a settled fact, something the world would quietly agree with once I stopped resisting it. My brother even joked that I'd come to my senses before it was too late. 68 guests had turned into none. And still, they believed they had saved me from embarrassment. What they didn't understand was that I wasn't trying to win their approval anymore. I was documenting everything. Every forwarded message. Every cancelled RSVP. Every quiet refusal from relatives who suddenly became too busy. Even the smallest reactions mattered now. A pause before answering my name. A change in tone when Marcus was mentioned. Fear doesn't always shout, it leaks. And in all of it, one truth became clearer. They weren't just excluding Marcus. They were trying to erase him from my life entirely. But they made one mistake. They assumed I was still asking for permission to exist. People think power is loud. But I learned something different in those days. It reveals itself in habits. My mother always repeated phrases when she was trying to control a narrative. My brother avoided direct confrontation, but he excelled at planting doubt in indirect ways. And my relatives, they followed patterns of convenience, not conviction. So I stopped reacting emotionally and started watching mechanically. Who echoed my mother's wording exactly? Who suddenly stopped mentioning the wedding altogether? Who changed the subject whenever Marcus came up? I wrote it all down. Not out of anger. Out of clarity. Because something didn't add up. The speed of the collapse was too coordinated. Too clean. It wasn't just persuasion, it was pressure. Structured, intentional pressure. And the more I traced it, the more I realized, my mother wasn't just discouraging attendance. She was constructing isolation. Not from Marcus. From me. And that meant there had to be a system behind it, or someone helping her build it. I didn't tell anyone what I found. Not Marcus. Not a friend. Not even a hint of it on my face. Instead, I made a simple request to the venue, a full guest communication log. Standard procedure, I said. Nothing urgent. No suspicion in my voice. It arrived 2 days later. That's when I saw it. My mother's email hadn't just been sent to a few relatives. It had been forwarded through a curated chain, family friends, distant cousins, even people I hadn't spoken to in years. But what mattered wasn't just who received it. It was who amplified it. 3 names appeared repeatedly in forwarding patterns. People with influence inside our extended circle. People I trusted once. And beneath it all, timestamps. Perfect coordination. Like a rehearsed sequence. I didn't react. I copied everything. Because now I knew something important. This wasn't gossip spreading on its own. It was being conducted. The moment I started digging deeper, I knew I wasn't invisible anymore. Patterns don't stay hidden forever when you pull on them too hard. One evening, I noticed something unsettling. My mother had changed her communication style. No more mass emails. No more obvious wording. Everything had become fragmented, verbal, untraceable. She was adapting. That meant she suspected something. At the same time, one of the relatives I had been tracking stopped interacting with my posts entirely. Not just silence, intentional avoidance. The kind that happens when someone realizes they might be watched. For the first time, I felt the system push back. Marcus noticed the shift in me before I said anything. He didn't ask questions. He just said, "You're getting close to something dangerous, aren't you?" I didn't answer. Because the truth was worse. I wasn't just close. I was already inside it. And if they realized how much I had gathered, they wouldn't try to defend themselves. They would try to stop me. I knew I couldn't carry everything alone anymore. So I made a decision I didn't announce to anyone. I stepped away from my usual work channels for a week. No publishing deadlines, no routine communication. To the outside world, it looked like I was overwhelmed by wedding stress. That was the point. In reality, I used the time to cross-check every piece of information I had collected. Email logs. RSVP changes. Forwarding chains. I built a timeline so precise it stopped feeling like emotion and started feeling like evidence. But there was a cost. My distance gave them room to believe I was breaking. My mother even sent a message through my brother, "We knew this would be too much for you." I didn't respond. Instead, I focused on one final detail, the connection between those 3 key relatives and my mother's private conversations. Because if I could prove coordination, not coincidence, everything would collapse at once. And I was almost there. I didn't expose anything yet. Instead, I waited. Because I realized something important: people don't reveal their full hand when they think they're already winning. They get careless. They repeat themselves. They stop hiding patterns they believe no one is analyzing. And that's exactly what happened. 2 days before the wedding, my mother organized a private call with several relatives. I wasn't invited, of course, but someone I had quietly built trust with stayed in the background and recorded it. I didn't need many words. I heard her clearly say it: if we don't attend, no one else will feel comfortable going. That was the strategy. Social pressure. Reputation control. Isolation by influence. Not a misunderstanding. A coordinated decision. When I listened to the recording, I didn't feel shocked. I felt calm. Because now everything had a shape. A structure. A weakness. And for the first time, I stopped preparing to defend myself. I started preparing to reveal them. The wedding hall was too quiet. 34 empty chairs stared back at me as I walked down the aisle alone, my footsteps echoing like they belonged to someone else's life. No music mattered anymore. No expectations survived the silence. Marcus was already there at the altar, calm, waiting, not confused, not shaken. Just present. Then it happened. A guest collapsed mid-ceremony. Panic should have followed. Instead, Marcus moved first. He dropped beside the man, checked his pulse, and took control of the room with a voice that didn't belong to a security guard. He issued instructions: clear, precise, automatic. People obeyed without thinking. Someone started recording. 10 seconds. That's all it took. Because in those 10 seconds, Marcus wasn't exposed as a less. He was exposed as something far beyond what they assumed. Within hours, the video spread everywhere. Medical professionals recognized him instantly. He wasn't security. He was one of the region's top trauma surgeons, known for saving lives in high-pressure emergency cases, and the creator of a widely adopted trauma response protocol. My mother saw the video before anyone else in our family. And for the first time, she had no words. The video didn't just go viral, it detonated. Within 24 hours, millions had seen Marcus kneeling on that floor, giving life-saving instructions with absolute authority. Hospitals confirmed his identity. Former colleagues came forward. Patients shared testimonies that painted a picture my family never bothered to look for. The security guard narrative collapsed instantly. And then, the emails surfaced. Someone leaked everything: my mother's message, the forwarding chain, the coordinated effort to isolate our wedding. It spread fast, too fast to contain. Screenshots were everywhere. The intention was undeniable. My family didn't just disapprove. They orchestrated exclusion. The fallout was immediate. Social circles distanced themselves. Invitations disappeared. My mother's reputation, carefully built over decades, fractured in public view. My brother stopped posting entirely. Even relatives who participated in silence began publicly distancing themselves. And then came the irony they couldn't escape. My father collapsed 3 months later from a severe cardiac event. The hospital he was taken to requested one of their top specialists. Marcus arrived. No hesitation. No emotion on display. Just medicine. He saved him. After the procedure, my father tried to speak. Apologize. Explain. But Marcus stopped him gently. I don't choose who deserves care, he said. I treat who needs it. Not revenge. Not cruelty. Just distance. My mother tried to reach me after that, calls, letters, apologies written in a tone I had never heard from her before. But apologies don't erase patterns. They only reveal awareness of them. I didn't forgive them the way they expected. I chose something stronger. Boundaries. I told them clearly, there would be no return to what we were. No restoration of what was broken by design, not accident. I could acknowledge them, but I would no longer be available for their judgment. And for the first time in my life, they had no control over that decision. Marcus and I stayed together. Not because the world suddenly approved, but because we never needed it to. We built a quiet life after that. Simple. Stable. Real. Holidays were spent with his family, people who never asked for status before kindness. People who showed up without conditions. One evening, long after everything settled, I asked him why he never told anyone who he was. He looked at me for a long moment before answering. Because I wanted to be loved as a person first, not a title. That answer stayed with me more than anything else that happened. Because in the end, the truth wasn't what destroyed my family. It was what revealed them. Status didn't define character. Love didn't require approval. And family is not always who you are born to. It's who stands beside you when there's nothing to gain. As I closed that chapter of my life, I realized something I will never forget. You don't need forgiveness to move forward. You need boundaries strong enough to protect your peace. And mine, finally were. If this story made you feel something, don't just leave it here. Like the video if you believe silence can sometimes be stronger than revenge. Comment below with the moment that shocked you the most and where you're watching from. And if you want more stories about hidden truths, quiet strength, and unexpected justice, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what comes next.